Back to the review of the Coach's Resource Guide for Interscholastic Unified Tennis. This is part 2, which is the overview of the sport. In this section, I will be discussing all of the items in this what you see on the screen here under competition. Our resource guide is fully digital with hyperlinks from the table of contents to the various sections of the guide. We've already discussed in part 1 the season timeline. From there, we'll go to coaches, education, and resources. Here on page 3, we provide this section for you so that any coach can come on board and even with maybe very little tennis knowledge, have an idea of some good coaching resources. We also have, do not forget, in our coaches resource folder on the Google Drive, how-to videos of all sorts on various aspects of the Interscholastic Unified Tennis program. The official rules and overview of the Unified Team Tennis program. In Unified Team Tennis, we have doubles teams composed of players with and without disabilities that play together in matches against double teams of similar ability levels. The outcome of each doubles match helps to determine the Unified Tennis team's final score. We do our Special Olympics Maryland Unified Tennis matches are governed by the rules summarized in both this document and the USTA rules. For team scoring, which is pertinent to district tournaments and the state competition, 1 point is awarded to a team for each victorious doubles match. This follows interscholastic high school tennis scoring rules. For the individual skills competition, which I will review in a separate video, the participant who scores the highest score will earn 1 point for his or her team. Each doubles team will compete in at least one scoring doubles match. Teams may compete in matches in which one or both of the teams will not score points for their team. This designation will be determined prior to competition. If both teams are not eligible to score points for their team, the match will be considered exhibition. These matches are important to allow for participation opportunities. Additionally, if one team is eligible to score points for their team, the opposing team can block them from scoring. For example, Team A is competing against Team B. The match is not a scoring match for Team A. Team B is eligible for scoring. Team A wins, thus no points are awarded to either team because the match was non-scoring for Team A. If Team B wins, they score 1 point for their team. Roster sizes. A team, a roster, is the collective group of players who are training or practicing together. A team lineup is the competition pairings. A competition lineup must consist of a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 10 players. Please note that those players have to be formed into doubles teams in order to be eligible for competition. So when we say a minimum of 6 players, that means a minimum of 3 doubles teams. A high school may have 2 or more unified tennis teams lineups, provided that each lineup meets the size specifications and proportionality requirements, and that pairings stay consistent throughout the duration of the season. Students with all types of disabilities should be recruited to participate. Unified tennis is intended to be a no-cut participation opportunity. However, unified sports will maintain compliance with the Code of Maryland regulations. There is some proportionality in the players with disabilities and players without disabilities on the roster. It is important to work as hard as possible to ensure 50% of the roster of students has students with disabilities. The following are guidelines when assembling a unified tennis team. 1, the best experience is achieved when there is a proportionate number of students with and without disabilities on the roster. 50% of the team members should have a disability such as an intellectual or related developmental disability or a physical disability. 50% of the roster should be students without disabilities. These guidelines are to create a fulfilling inclusion experience and ensure that all IUS tennis teams are fulfilling the spirit and intent of the Maryland Fitness and Athletics Equity for Students with Disabilities law. Since the mission of Unified Sports is to be inclusive as possible, and it is a no-cut sport, every possible effort should be made to create doubles pairs that are composed of one student with and without a disability. But after that, other students may be paired with players without a disability, without any disabilities in the pairing, or with two student athletes with a disability. And the table on the screen you can see shows how those matches will be considered for scoring purposes in the district and state tournament. As you'll see, a student with an intellectual disability could be paired with a unified partner with an IEP that we delineate as an IEP 504, or a student without a disability. Exhibition if they're paired with another student with a disability. And a student with a disability that is not intellectual and not an intellectual disability, can be paired for scoring purposes with another student athlete with an intellectual disability or with no disability. And a unified partner, a person with no disability at all, can be paired with a student athlete with an intellectual disability or with a unified partner IEP 504 designation for scoring purposes. But if paired with another unified partner with no disability, that match would be played exhibition. We do utilize the Unified Tennis Rating System, which is derived from the U.S. Tennis Association, the USTA National Tennis Rating Program. All players will have their ability level assessed and receive a rating score. After that rating session, when assembling a doubles pair, the players need to be as closely aligned in ability as possible. I must stress that all coaches please review and re-review this section with great attention to detail, as this is the most common mistakes that we see when accepting your post-season registrations in the past several years. These are the absolute most common mistakes. Players either should have the same rating. For example, player A and player B have a 4 rating, which is a completely arbitrary number that's put in here. Or they vary by no more than 5 points, such as player A has a rating of 10 and player B has a rating of 15. Schools may have different challenges with school populations, however, and therefore, if after all players have been paired and there are players that remain with more than those 5 points of variance, the players may be paired together provided that the following conditions are met. So these are intended to be done in this exact order. No one may skip a level. Okay, for example, a red ball player cannot be paired with someone who would independently be rated to play green or yellow. However, a red ball player can play with red ball players or an orange ball player. That's number one. Number two, if two players of differing levels need to be paired together, the pair will play at the combined score of the team. We will review Rule 11 in a moment. And one meaning the coach, must pair the lowest rated student with a disability with the lowest rated student without a disability, the second lowest rated student with a disability with the second lowest rated student without a disability, and so on. A visual of guideline number 1 is provided for you on this page. We do also have some supplementary recordings that can explain in a more visual capacity how you can pair your player ratings, your rated players after you have completed that rating session, and if you are dealing with some variances greater than 5. When scheduling matches for competition, doubles teams with similar rating scores need to play each other. And if necessary, singles players with similar rating scores need to play each other. So a doubles team rating score is the combined score of the two players. So player A is a 4, player B is a 5, giving their doubles team a score of 9. And as I said before, those are just completely arbitrary numbers because we actually do not have a player rating below 5. However, so if player A and player B have a combined score of 9, they should be playing the doubles team that is most closely aligned with that rating of 9. So they should play someone else who is rated a 9 or kind of keep in that 5-point variance guideline. But they also must be in the same court level. They must have if it's a red ball doubles team, they must play another red ball doubles team. They cannot play an orange ball doubles team. Number 9, competition lineups. So a coach may activate no fewer than 6 and no more than 10 players to compete in a unified team tennis competition. Schools with rosters 12 or larger may have 2 unified tennis teams participate. There is a little footnote to this, and that is when we talk about the individual skills competition. You may have no fewer than 6 who are eligible for doubles play, no more than 10 who are eligible for doubles play, but you can have an unlimited number of individual skills competition participants. So, for example, if you have 5 doubles teams, that would be 10 players on your roster, and then 3 individuals with disabilities who are competing in the individual skills competition, they may be placed on one roster. There are no substitutions allowed for doubles team during a match. If a player is unable to complete the match, his or her team will forfeit, and we will talk about that in the match play rules summary section. We do have designated tennis balls for competition. The ratings of those doubles teams determine what type of ball must be used for the competition and also their court size. So doubles teams with a combined score between 12 and 20 play short court and use a 75% lower compression ball. Doubles teams with a combined rating of 21 to 30 will play full court with an orange ball, which is orange and yellow striped, or a traditional looking ball with an orange dot on it. Doubles teams with a combined rating of 31 to 40 will play full court using a 25% lower compression ball, which is green and yellow striped, or it's a traditional ball with a green dot. And doubles teams with a combined rating of 41 or higher will play full court using a regulation, which is also designated as a yellow ball. Short court tennis, so in short court play, which is also using the red ball or the red striped ball, all rules are the same with one major exception. The service boxes are used as the boundary lines for the match. So the alleys are actually out of bounds. For local competitions, the following formats should be used. If each team has 6 players, at least 3 scoring doubles matches are played. If a team has 7 players, at least 3 scoring doubles matches and 1 singles exhibition match are played. Each team has 8 players, at least 4 scoring doubles matches are played, or 3 doubles matches and 2 singles. If each team has 9, 4 scoring doubles matches and 1 singles match are played. And then if each team has 10 players, at least 5 scoring doubles matches are played. When one team has more players than the opposing team, these additional players may compete in an exhibition singles match. Okay, bouncing back up to our table of contents. And then we will go over match play and rule summary at this point. Competition will be governed by the rules of tennis for the official code of the United States Tennis Association. The USTA publishes these rules in the publication Friend at Court. Please note that items of particular importance are contained in this resource guide. For service, the service motion may be underhand or overhand. That's important to note. Some coaches don't know. As long as the ball does not bounce before being struck, you may use overhand or an underhand swing. The player must stand behind the service line, which is the baseline in the full court play, but the service box in short court. Players serving must remain behind the line until contact with the ball is made. If the player's foot touches or crosses any part of the line, it is considered a foot fault. Service momentum may carry a player over the line only after the ball is struck. Service rotation must stay the same throughout each set. At the beginning of the new set, a team may elect to alter their service rotation. Receiving formation must stay consistent throughout the match. If a player starts the match receiving on a forehand side, he or she must continue receiving the serve on the forehand side. For scoring, the USTA score short set format will be used. A match consists of the best 2 out of 3 sets. In a short set, the team that wins 4 games wins that set, provided there is a winning margin of 2 games. If a set is at 4-3, another game is played and the set is finished if the team leading wins the game, making it 5-3. If the set reaches 4-4, a 7-point tiebreak game is played. The first team to win 7 points wins the tiebreaker, provided that the winning margin is 2 points. If the match score is 1-1, a 10-point tiebreak game is used as the format for the third set to decide the match. The team that first wins 10 points wins this tiebreaker and the match, provided the winning margin is 2 points. At the completion of the second set, there is a mandatory 3-minute rest period for the players before the start of the third set tiebreaker. The no-ad scoring system will be used. The first team to reach 4 points wins the game. If the game is tied at 3-3, the 7th point becomes the game point for each team. It is the receiving team's choice who will receive the serve. Note that the serve is received on the side that the elected student athlete is playing. There is continuous play, which is 20 seconds between points, 90 seconds on changeovers, and no break after the first game. For coaching, players may receive coaching from a designated coach when the player changes ends at the end of the game. Coaching is not allowed during the tiebreak. Balls, the Revolution red foam balls that are pictured at right are a good training and teaching tool. However, they are not to be used for competition. There are 4 balls used for competition, as are pictured here, and I referenced just a moment ago. The red and yellow striped ball, the orange and yellow striped ball, or also sometimes it is a traditional looking ball with an orange dot, the green and yellow striped ball, or the green dot, and then the yellow traditional tennis ball. Players that compete in the individual skills competition, which I will review in a separate video, will use the 75% lower compression balls, the red that you see in the picture. Medical timeouts and bathroom breaks. A medical timeout for each new medical condition or aggravation of a pre-existing condition may be taken during the warm-up or match for a treatable medical condition. Treatable medical conditions include, but are not limited to, injury, illness, and heat-related conditions or cramps. A player may request 1 bathroom break during the match. Players may be escorted during bathroom breaks. Coaching is not allowed during medical or toilet breaks. We do allow modifications for student athletes who use a wheelchair. So players using a wheelchair are allowed 2 bounces of the ball when receiving. The second bounce can be in or out of the court boundaries. The wheelchair is considered to be part of the body, and all applicable rules which apply to the player's body apply to the wheelchair. The server shall, throughout the delivery of a service, not touch with any wheel or any area other than that behind the baseline. When a player who uses a wheelchair is playing with or against a player who does not use a wheelchair in singles or doubles, the rules for tennis with a wheelchair only apply for the player using a wheelchair. For example, during play, a player who uses a wheelchair is allowed 2 bounces, and the player not using a wheelchair is allowed 1. Additional modifications for players with visual impairments or other physical disabilities will be implemented when necessary. For scoring, 1 point is awarded to a team for each winning doubles match. At the conclusion of competition, the team with the highest point total shall be declared the champion. In the event of a forfeit, the match will be scored 6-0, 6-0. In the event of a tie for team points, the tie will be determined by the following. First, the fewest number of sets lost in all non-exhibition matches. Second, the most games won in all non-exhibition matches. Third, the fewest number of games lost in all non-exhibition matches. Protests must be filed within the pre-established timeline, example, within 15 minutes of the completion of a match. Players or coaches can protest a misinterpretation or application of a rule, but not a judgment call. So, for example, an official calling the ball in or out. Protests are to be submitted in writing to the control tent, and this is pertinent to the district tournament and the state competition. So bouncing back up to our table of contents, there are several points of emphasis. Quite obviously, in the spirit of sportsmanship, at the conclusion of each match, teams will come together and shake hands. Line calls are to be made by the players themselves, as is in interscholastic tennis and traditional tennis as a whole. If any part of the ball is touching any part of the line, the ball is in. The golden rule is that if you are not 100% sure about a call, then always give the benefit of the doubt to your opponent. If you cannot be 100% positive that the ball was out, you must play the ball. An out call shall be made almost instantaneously with ball to court contact. The player will signal by yelling out and raising his or her hand. The ball will not be played. If line calls are disputed on multiple occasions, either opponent has the right to request a lines judge. In this case, each opposing coach will designate one representative to fill this duty, or if representatives are not available, an independent person will be assigned. Take the time to review this attached video presentation for more information on this subject. Event appropriateness. Unified team tennis allows players to safely and successfully participate and contribute to the success of their team. To do so, players need to train and compete in events appropriate for their skill level as determined during the player assessments. And just a note on that, sometimes we have student athletes, perhaps with a physical disability, who in all other ways would be appropriate for doubles play, except that they cannot, maybe due to a range of motion issue, protect their body from an oncoming ball in the right amount of time, or they don't have necessarily the control of all their extremities fully in order to protect themselves or not be cause undue safety risk to anyone else on the court with them. In those cases, those student athletes are unfortunately not appropriate necessarily in doubles play. However, that is exactly why the individual skills competition exists. So just be mindful as coaches of what is truly appropriate. And we do always try to have every student athlete compete in a doubles team if at all possible. The simplified 7-point tiebreak procedure is here. I will not go over it right now reading line by line, as it's something probably better reviewed individually by each person. Those who do have former tennis experience should understand the tiebreak game. But what we do note is that during competition, during the district tournament and the state competition, to ensure that the 7-point tiebreak game that decides a set, or the 10-point tiebreak game that decides the match, is played according to the rules, competition or tournament personnel or a coach should be present to supervise. And that's the same at the local level competition. When you are competing in matches at the local level, a coach should be the one that actually administers and supervises these tiebreak games. Oftentimes our scorekeepers are totally volunteers, and they are not to be considered in any way officials. So it's best that we allow these games to be played under the supervision of those of us who understand the rules and can guide the student athletes through the serving rotation. So, and it is perfectly acceptable to suspend play until someone can get to that game. and administer. On winning the toss, so the rule is that if a player wins the coin toss or the racket spin, that players may either choose to serve or receive in the first game of the match, or they can choose the end of court to begin play. So if the players who win the coin toss choose the end of the court to begin the match, the opponents then choose whether to serve or receive in the first game of the match. The players who won the toss initially may choose to defer to their opponents, in which case the opponents now have to make one of the two above choices. They cannot defer it back to the initial team. Okay. The principle of meaningful involvement, which is the most important of the 7 criteria for the success of a Special Olympics Unified Sports Program. Fundamentally, the principle of meaningful involvement ensures that every player is given an opportunity to contribute to the success of his or her team through their unique skills and qualities. This means that every teammate, A, demonstrates sufficient sport-specific skills and game understanding, B, plays a valued role on the team that emphasizes his or her personal talents, and C, has an opportunity to play without a heightened risk of injury. All team members must be engaged and provide their own individual abilities and strengths. In so doing, athletes and partners may have different perspectives. The athletes, people with disabilities on the team, may not be accustomed to the experience of having their contributions accepted and respected. On the other hand, partners, people without disabilities, may need to be encouraged to play to their own personal bests while being a good teammate to others. Consequently, when unified sports teams are created, it is extremely important that all players are assessed as to their abilities in gameplay. While there could be noticeable differences in their skills, the coach will be able to observe their overall performance to determine if they have the requisite skills and understanding to safely participate on this team. The goal is that every teammate should play a meaningful role and have the opportunity to contribute to his unified sports team. There should be a quality of social interaction and communication among teammates that allows everyone to participate fully and to enjoy a positive experience. So this principle is often best understood when looking at examples and non-examples. So examples of the meaningful involvement in action is that teammates compete without causing undue risk of injury to themselves or others. They participate according to the rules of the competition, meaning that the competition itself does not have to be altered for them. Teammates have the ability and opportunity to contribute to the success of the team. That means that everyone has an opportunity to score. Teammates adjust their skills according to those of other players, resulting in improved performance by team members with lesser ability. Non-examples of meaningful involvement. So these things are meaningful involvement is not achieved when certain teammates display superior sports skills without involving their teammates. If they serve predominantly as on-field coaches rather than teammates or mentors. If they control most aspects of the game, especially during the most critical periods. If they're not held to the same participation expectations. For example, they do not train or practice regularly. They lower their level of ability dramatically so that they do not hurt others or control the entire game. So it's critical that all coaches and program leaders understand this principle prior to the selection of team members. As you can see, unified sports further meets the mission of Special Olympics and embraces the philosophy and principles of Special Olympics unified sports. So how does this look for interscholastic unified tennis? So when a team is receiving the serve, both the athlete and partner should share the front-back formation equally. No player can play the net at all times. Or when playing the side-by-side formation, one may not step in front of his or her doubles partner in order to make a play. Now, does that happen sometimes in interscholastic tennis? Of course it does. Why we make a note of it is that if it happens repeatedly and constantly, it's something that we are going to have an eye on and issue a warning for. The serve must be shared between both doubles players, just as in any regulation tennis match. And the unified partner can sometimes be put in the position of having to guide his or her teammate through the game, such as making line calls or reminding his or her teammate whose serve it is, etc. However, the unified partner should not be acting as an on-court coach and giving orders. And just a note, violations of the principle of meaningful involvement are not limited to what I just explained there. So the success of a quality unified sports program is predicated upon the application of that principle of meaningful involvement. So if during the district or state tournaments, at the discretion of the tournament director, any aspect of the principle of meaningful involvement is not being followed, a warning and an explanation will be given to the head coach of the team in violation. Continued failure to properly adhere to the principle of meaningful involvement will lead to forfeiture of the game. As I said just a moment ago, please be aware that scorekeepers are not responsible for enforcing this principle. Scorekeepers are volunteers and not referees. There will be, however, roving officials and tournament personnel who will be moving amongst the matches to answer questions and to enforce rules. It is in the best interest of the unified tennis coaches to monitor their own players and to take the initiative to warn those players if they see violations of the principle of meaningful involvement, lest a roving official or tournament personnel see a violation and issue the first warning. As you'll see below, violations will be handled as such. The first offense is a warning. This bullet point, that play should be suspended immediately so that tournament personnel has the opportunity to observe. That is obviously a warning would not be issued until that observation happened. No, we will not be giving out warnings blindly. The coach will then have the opportunity to correct a violation if a warning is given. The second offense in the same match, the team in violation will lose a point. The third offense, the team in violation will forfeit the match. And as I said, scorekeepers are not referees and therefore will not be issuing warnings. They will not be issuing violations of any sort. Just as a best practice, it's a good idea to designate some of your non-playing teammates. So if you have some student athletes who are not currently playing because their matches may be in another round, it's a good idea to have them kind of watch and report back to you if they see any questionable circumstances. The MPSSAA Code of Maryland Regulations. Student athletes, coaches, and all affiliates of interscholastic unified sports must remain compliant with school system specific and MPSSAA regulations. So just jumping back to our table of contents, we have reviewed coaches' education resources, official rules and overview of unified tennis, match play rules, points of emphasis. We also have an example of the match play score sheet, which is here at this hyperlink. We won't review it now. And then we will talk about uniform requirements and player assessments. So all members of your team are required to be in school-issued uniform for all regular season and tournament play. It's the responsibility of the match or the tournament director and match officials to enforce the regulations, and the decision of the official is final. All uniform complaints must be registered before the start of the match. Coaches are required to report violations to the tournament director. During the regular season, it will be the responsibility of the tournament director to make the ruling. At the district and state tournament, the responsibility will lie with the tournament director. So the uniform regulations that are in effect are as follows. The shirt must be either a polo or a t-shirt type in its design. The shirt may be sleeveless with normal sleeve openings, but no modified or oversized arm openings, and the openings must not be enlarged at all. Only regular or regular size sleeve openings are allowed. Shirts must have a school color. However, a white or black shirt with school identification is permitted. No plain white or shirts that are turned inside out to circumvent the uniform rule will be allowed. There can be no markings on the shirt other than the school name, the player's name, the school mascot, normal manufacturer's trim or logo, no more than 2¼ square inches, and or tennis symbols. No team rosters or schedules or quotes or sayings will be allowed on competitive shirts. When standing, apparel must cover the midriff. Bottoms may be shorts, skirts, or athletic pants, such as sweatpants, ideally of a school color, black or white. Visible undergarments worn under the uniform must be unadorned and a single solid color. A school name or insignia is permitted, provided it's no larger than 2¼ inches square and no dimension is larger than 2¼ inches. Visible undergarments worn both top and bottom do not have to be the same color. Jewelry, there's no jewelry allowed with the exception of religious or medical medals or medallions. If such are worn, they shall be taped to the body under the uniform. No chains. Earrings, neck chains, bracelets. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I misspoke. It is illegal to tape over jewelry, earrings, body rings, etc. See the religious or medical exception. Earrings, neck chains, bracelets, wrist and ankle made of any material is also considered jewelry. So basically, no jewelry unless it's religious or medical. Headwear, religious or medical related headwear is permissible. Headbands, wristbands, and armbands must be of a solid color. If a solid color, a piece of material may be folded, tied, and used as a headband as long as it is not wider than 2 inches. All caps, if worn, the bill must be worn forward. There are penalties. A player will not begin play with an illegal uniform. If a legal uniform cannot be obtained, the player is disqualified in that event. Uniform violations do not apply during warm-ups. Once the match has begun and a uniform violation is noted, an automatic penalty will be assessed to the player. The player must immediately comply with the uniform rule or the player will be disqualified from the event. Removing the tennis shirt, so appearing with a bare upper body while in the tennis court area shall lead to a penalty, and if repeated, to disqualification from the event. And also note, players must wear their tennis uniform or proper school-issued uniform, such as warm-ups, and must wear proper footwear, so no flip-flops or slippers, to accept an award at the district and state tournament. Unified sports logo usage. So all new uniforms purchased in 2013 or after must have the Unified Sports pill-shaped logo appear on their jersey, shirt, or uniform. And the specifications for that are on this page. So back to our table of contents. And lastly, in this section, we will review player assessments. So as I began in explaining the overview of the sport, we do review and rate all players across the entire state. So an independent USTA or Special Olympics Maryland designee will use the Unified Tennis Rating System to evaluate players and place them in an appropriate event, providing for equal competition among teams. The system is modeled after levels 1 to 3 of the USTA National Tennis Rating Program to categorize playing ability into 8 levels. Each level consists of components evaluating forehand, backhand, serve, volleys, and court movement. By using the Unified Tennis Rating, we hope to provide for consistency among raters throughout the state. This is what the Unified Tennis Rating Sheet looks like. Coaches, please pre-fill everything here at the top. You should do this well in advance of your rating session. This is because a rater may be showing up on site and rating 4, 5, 6, or more teams that day, and they have a finite window of time in which to complete all of those things. So you really do have to have everything pre-filled so that you can just hand your rating sheets to the rater. The rater will complete the actual rating in each of the areas: movement, forehand, backhand, serve, volleys, and return of serve. However, we do ask that coaches sort of give a starting point to the rater. So in pencil, for each student athlete, pre-rate them in each of these areas. I do not want to be confused or confuse, but coaches are not to do ratings. They are not the official raters of any of the student athletes. The purpose of the rating and the player assessments is to have an impartial judge of a student athlete's ability so that competition can be authentic. So coaches, we do ask that you pre-fill these to give an idea for the rater. As I said, a player rater is coming through and has limited time to see as much as possible. We know that you know your student athletes, you know their ability and what they're able to do, but that impartial judge can also be kind of a voice of reason as to being honest about a player's abilities. So you will pre-fill, the rater will complete the rating. If there are any areas on site where you disagree and you want to make your case to the rater, and he or she can be convinced of your rating either going up or down in a particular area, that's something that you can work out on the spot. However, once the rater has completed the rating, that is the official rating for each individual student athlete. If as time goes on, because player rate assessments are in September, if by mid-October, right before your district tournament, you believe that you have a student athlete or more than one student athlete who has improved significantly over the season, and you would like for a change in their individual rating to be considered, you can submit that to the sport chairs for consideration. So you will fill out one of these player assessment rating forms for each of your student athletes, and the rater will complete and sign, and then from this you will create your doubles teams and your pairings from there, and you will submit those on the postseason registration, which I will go over in part 3 of this review. So at this point, this concludes the overview of Interscholastic Unified Tennis. If you have any questions, you can contact your district representative, or in the absence of a district representative, your regional sports director. If they do not have the answer, then you can always contact the Interscholastic Unified Tennis Sport Chair or Assistant Chair with any of your questions. Thank you for tuning in to this segment, and I will see you on part 3.